All right, so welcome to the final championship round of the 2020 Cast Distance Olympics. And if you are watching this video and wondering what the hell's going on, I suggest that you pause it, go to the description box, and there's a link that I put there for the first part of this video series. And I suggest you watch that first and then come back to this one. And then also I suggest that everyone watch this all the way through to the end because it'll make a lot more sense. Okay, so just a quick recap. I started off with 6 reels and a 1/2 ounce casting plug, and the top 4 reels get to move on to this final round where we throw a reel lure, which is the 3/4 ounce Strike King Red Eye Shad lipless crankbait. So without further ado, let's get to the casting footage. Okay, so for those of you who actually paid attention to the cast numbers, then you might have noticed something that was kind of odd, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Now I'm going to go ahead and flash the numbers up, and as you can see, coming in 4th place, it's going to be the DAIWA TATULA Elite Long Cast with an average of 157.3 feet. Coming in 3rd place is the REVO EXD, one of the reels that was favored to win this round because of the last round results, and that averaged 161 foot even. And then coming in 3rd place is the SHIMANO ANTARES A with an average of 174.52 feet. That means the winner was the ANTARES DC, also by SHIMANO, with an average of 185.08 feet. Okay, so now it's time to talk about what was odd. And what was odd was the really disappointingly short cast distances out there. And I immediately noticed that. Now, I already know what the problem was, and let's talk about that. Now, coming into this contest, I already had the rod picked out for the 1/2 ounce casting plug, but it was going to be a challenge to find a rod that I felt could handle this lure and how heavy it is, that I would be able to cast comfortably. So I narrowed it down to 3 choices, and the first choice was a 7'2" Shimano Zodius heavy powered, and strangely enough, that rod felt overpowered by this 3/4 ounce Red Eye Shad. So I'm thinking Shimano might be overestimating their lure ratings on that rod. And for those of you who own a Zodius, you'll know as well that those have really, really thin grips and I don't like thin grips when I'm casting for distance. So the Zodius was out. Now the second choice was an original DAIWA TATULA 6'10" medium heavy. It's got a noticeably thicker grip. It's more comfortable than the Zodius, but that rod also felt like it was overpowered by this lure. So the third and final choice was a 6'6" Gander Mountain Vortex. It's like a cheap $20 rod, and that's also medium heavy. Now that rod also felt like it was slightly overpowered by this lure, but not to the degree that the other two felt. And it's also got a really thick cork grip that can grip really good, which I like for long distance casting. So that's the reason why, and also the fact that I was casting overhead and it was really hard to get a good clean cast, as well as I felt that that rod was probably going to snap or the line was going to snap. I definitely have a mental block when it comes to casting heavier lures when I feel that the rod is being overpowered. So it really bothered me when I was driving home. So I decided to do the test over again. And I looked through my rod arsenal and I think I found the perfect rod. Well, at least a much better rod this time around. And it's a 7'6" Lucky Craft Carolina rig rod that's rated at extra heavy with an extra fast tip. Now, the great thing about this rod is that it definitely didn't feel like this lure was overpowering it. And it's got a nice, full, thick cork grip that I could really grasp. And that's important for me when it comes to the release point, because the release point definitely helps in one aspect of this, and that's getting a clean cast. So let's review that footage right now. Alright, so before we get to these final results, in case you weren't paying attention, I actually had to modify my cast in this video. I had to do a combination overhead sidearm cast, and I actually rotated my torso. That actually allowed me to get clean cast with this lure a lot easier. And what I mean by a clean cast is that this lure is actually big enough that I could see it flying through the air. And if it was flying through the air like this, then that's a clean cast. But if it was tumbling and helicoptering like this, the cast was really, really short, and more times than not it blew the spools up on these reels because I was on the limit of breaking. So yeah, if you're thinking that a bigger lipless crank is going to get you farther distance, yeah, it will, but the chances of this thing helicoptering are a lot greater than an average lipless crank. As you can see the size difference between this one and the standard 1/2 ounce red-eye shad. Okay, so with that being said, let's get to these results. And the big question is, using a much heavier powered rod and a much longer rod, did that change the casting order amongst these reels? And the answer is yes. So coming in 4th place, it's going to be the GARCIA REVO EXD with an average of 188.25 feet. So it gained almost 10 yards versus its previous result. And I'm not sure if, that result is really good or really bad. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, GARCIA said that this thing can cast 100 yards with whatever. But all I'm saying is show us the video evidence. And I'm not talking about, casting to a target out on the water. Show us a real lure with a measured cast. All right, so coming in 3rd place is the cheapest reel here, DAIWA's TATULA Elite Long Cast. So I say this is a victory for DAIWA, even though it comes in 3rd place, because these other reels are significantly more expensive. And the Elite Long Cast averaged 190.20 feet, so narrowly beating out the REVO EXD. But, this has a dynamic magnetic brake system that allows it to get away with the heavier spool. So GARCIA needs to come up with some kind of a dynamic magnetic brake system if they want to continue using that, in my opinion. And I have some ideas if you want to email me about that. Okay, so now that we got the scrubs out of the way, we just have to figure out which Shimano came in 1st place. And coming in 2nd place is the Shimano Antares A. And this averaged 195.68 feet. And we're going to talk about that for a moment. Now, what's great about this reel is that it has a super fast spool, but it's not uncontrollable, let's say like a Shimano CURADO 70. So that means I was actually able to go down to 1 brake on inside, and I was actually able to start backing this external dial down. And as you can see, I stopped right there. And the reason I stopped there is because if you paid attention to the first cast on this Antares, it pretty much casted all the line off, and there was probably less than a foot of line left. So I realized that if I back the brakes down even more, that the potential for this thing to cast all the line off and break the tape that I was using, and I'd have to go out and find it and reattach it, it'd just be a big hassle. That was definitely there. So this reel definitely has more in it, but Shimano just needs to give us a deeper spool option because of how well this thing can cast. And this thing casts super smooth. Now with a lot of Shimanos, with SPS Infinity, if you go down to 1 brake, that actually takes away a little bit from the casting smoothness, but not with this reel right here. Everything about this thing is buttery, silky smooth. It's just too damn heavy. Alright, so how many people thought that the Antares DC was just gonna monkey stomp all over all these other reels in this contest? Well, you were right. This thing averaged an easy 215.48 feet. And I say easy because it was literally too easy for this reel. I mean, I wasn't even able to access the extreme distance mode. I actually made those casts in the monofilament mode, as you can see. Apparently this big heavy lipless crank is not heavy enough to access that extreme distance mode. But yeah, even in the monofilament mode, casting those distances was effortless. It was super smooth. And even just making, you know, some practice sidearm lob casts, it was slinging that lure at least 50 yards. And what's strange is that this is the most uncomfortable reel for me to cast because it's so massive. So if distance is the name of the game, then you need to get one of these reels. I know it's the most expensive reel here, but if you're looking for distance with a real lure, I don't think any reel out there is going to be able to touch this until another Antares DC comes out. So there we go. The winner of the 2020 Cast Distance Olympics is the mighty Shimano Antares DC. Now, I'm going to do something that I haven't done before, and that is if I get 500 likes on this video within the first week, that's 7 days, I'll do another 2020 Cast Distance Olympics with all new reels. And that's because I've recently just received several different reels that have the reputation of being monster casters. And there was a couple of reels that I wanted to include, but I couldn't due to time constraints. So if you want to see that, go down, just hit the like button. And if I get over 500 likes within the first 7 days, then I'll make it happen. All right, guys, thanks a lot.